AskReddit by Joel Maria. If you have ever walked out of a cinema because the film was so bad, what one was it? I've not, but when I saw In Bruges, an elderly couple walked out after 20 minutes and I heard the man muttering that this wasn't a film about Belgium at all. It really tickled me. How can all those canals and bridges, and brutal violence and swearing not be somebody's thing? It's a fairytale fucking film. Oh, I remember vividly. It was Battlefield Earth. The shot angles kept being tilted this way and that for no reason and I started tilting my head so that things would be level. Then my friend joined in. Then we simultaneously were like, are we going to cramp our necks for this, and walked out. As Roger Ebert put it, the director, Roger Christian, has learned from better films that directors sometimes tilt their cameras, but he has not learned why. I guess this technically counts, but when I went to see Deadpool 2, the cinema accidentally put the wrong film on and played some Amy Schumer film instead. Everyone in the screen thought it was some Meet a Deadpool joke and out of nowhere he'd appear and shoot Amy Schumer, so we were all waiting on that. After about 10 minutes of the film, the staff came into the screen and explained that they had put the wrong film on and couldn't undo it because of their tight schedule etc, but we would all get a refund and were welcome to stay and watch the rest of the Amy Schumer film. Everyone left. I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy and they played Rise of the Guardians. It took about 5 minutes to realize it was the wrong movie the first time. They tried to fix it, played Rise again, tried to fix it, played Rise a third time, and the whole theater walked out for refunds. Apparently it was an issue at a lot of theaters. I left Frozen when I was 11 because I was scared of Mayo. The horror movie Frozen or the Disney movie? I've never walked out of a movie and I saw Cats opening weekend. I walked out on it, but then decided I wanted to be back inside. They let me back in, but then I walked out again. I walked out of 28 Days Later. Not because it was bad. I was 9 years old and snuck in and it was freaking me the fuck out. Watched it years later and enjoyed it. I saw Prometheus twice in theaters. At the second show, a group of 10-year-olds snuck in. The first R-rated scene, which features an alien worm snake that crawls inside someone's shattered arm, caused these kids to flee the theater in an absolute panic. I imagine they will never forget that day. Way back in the 70s, the movie Freaks, 1932, was re-released due to being banned in America for 40 years. My dad, my brother-in-law and myself went to see it. My dad is a extremely straight-laced, no humor type of guy and we couldn't figure out why he wanted to see it. It was pretty wild for my dad, but he made it through it. However, the second feature, a horror film called Private Parts, 1972, not Howard Stern's movie, was a bit much for dad. During a scene where the main character was fucking an inflatable doll full of water and injecting it with blood drawn from a victim, my dad stood up and said in a loud voice, "This is disgusting," and he walked out. My brother-in-law was right behind him. My brother and myself sat there laughing for about another 5 minutes before we got up and left. They were waiting out front for us and dad says he was only going to wait unearthed. The 70s. Epic movie. Wasn't epic at all. Oh, that film is dog shit. My parents took me and my sister to see a cool looking superhero movie when we were kids. That movie was Watchmen. My parents pulled us out after the big blue penis scene. Edit for clarification, not to say it's a bad movie, it's one of my favorite movies. You know, it's rated R for a few reasons. Big blue cock being one of them. My mom took me and my siblings to see Titanic when we were kids. Course there's only tits in that movie, but it was a mistake on her part. Lol. Downsizing. Man, did this movie have a great premise as a potential funny comedy. But out of nowhere it turned into some weird political love story. I remember in the middle of this movie audibly saying out loud, "Where the fuck is this story going? I don't know how you screw this up, but they did." I do a daily movie breakdown for a few friends, and last week was wasted potential week. Movies that completely failed to live up to their interesting premises. Downsizing was my exhibit A. So many interesting things to do with that idea, but if you walk into that movie 15 minutes late, you'd have no idea what that premise even was. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Once we got to the montages that were all of season 1, they didn't think were worth it. It was clear this wasn't the show I loved. The only good thing that this film brought were the comments roasting it. I watched this on a plane and walked out. I literally walk out of the cinema every time I see a movie. I've only ever walked out of one movie, and that was The Last Airbender, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. As a fan of the original animated series, I was excited to see a live-action adaptation, but the movie was a huge disappointment. The acting was wooden, the script was clunky, and the special effects were underwhelming. I made it about halfway through the movie before I decided that my time was better spent doing something else. It's rare for me to walk out of a movie, but The Last Airbender was just that bad. It was so weird that Firebender actually needed fire in the room to bend. Jack and Jill with Adam Sandler. Normally I like his movies, but not only was Jack and Jill his worst movie ever, I think it might be the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. Hilariously, one time on Survivor they made the reward from a reward challenge getting to see an early screening of Jack and Jill. https://the-jack-jill-f-survivor-be-study-be-y-study-b-17b9 Reactions varied wildly, and all I could think about was how they were torturing these poor starving people by foisting this Sandler steaming pile of shit on them. Green Lantern. Even Ryan Reynolds acknowledges how bad it is. He landed his wife, though. It was the price we had to pay for their love. Not the worst movie ever made, but the only movie I ever walked out of was The Butterfly Effect. I wasn't really enjoying it to begin with, but the girl who went with me had been scarred as a child by her father, so when the basement scene came on I looked at her and could tell she was petrified with PTSD. So I said, "This movie sucks, you wanna go?" and I got her out of there. Wow, I want to thank everyone for all the kind words. I'm just a guy who tries to make the conscious effort to do the right thing. I want to clarify though, I did get this movie on DVD to finish it, and I don't think it's a terrible movie. Personally, the only part that bothers me is the dog torture scene. Beyond that, I find the premise fascinating and there is some really good acting in the movie. I will just always have a weird feeling about this movie because of this event. Like a song you can never separate from a memory. Glad you did that. Hope she's doing okay wherever she is. By weird coincidence, I just walked out of Renfield earlier this evening. It's not that it was so bad, I've seen worse, but I was basically just there on a late night whim and found I was the only one in the theater. After a while I realized I really wasn't enjoying myself and didn't care that much how the movie ended, so on the off chance I was the only one keeping the employees from getting things shut down for the night, I just left. Oh, the employees don't care. They'll start the movie even if there isn't a single person in the theater. I was about 6 when it came out. Baby geniuses. Raised by grandparents, and we were on vacation in Arizona. We didn't necessarily walk out, but my grandfather fell asleep during the movie in the very small theater and started snoring so loudly that it caused people to leave. In the end, he saved them from an awful movie. I just distinctly remember him sitting there snoring, and my grandmother and I moving seats and laughing about the situation. Striptease. Burt Reynolds in boxer shorts, a cowboy hat and boots, covered in Vaseline, rubbing himself with dry lint from Demi Moore's laundry. I do not know how that movie ends, just know that I asked for my money back on a $1 noon matinee. The book is really good though. Pacific Rim Uprising. Worst sequel even made. It wasn't just a shit movie but an actual insult to the first one with how much they bastardized the original characters and story. Absolute fucking garbage. Emoji movie. Took my brothers to see it while I was babysitting. Almost committed suicide in the theater. This was showing on a flight I was on and people still walked out. I almost walked out on Jurassic World Dominion, but my friend bought a ticket for me and was super excited about it, so I stayed just for him. I am a huge dinosaur nerd. I love Jurassic Park and am generally happy to see anything featuring dinosaurs. It doesn't happen often, so I'm not picky. Just give me my big lizards, thank you. But Dominion was on a whole new level of bad. Just why? On another note, I'm still so impressed by the first one after all these years. The special effects still hold up so well. And it like 30 years old now. To say they had the task of making realistic dinosaurs, the special effects and animatronics or whatever, could have dated quickly, but it hasn't at all. Yes. The Last Airbender. What a tragic excuse for a movie. There was a scene where Aang was about to fight a whole army, so he does his little dance, trying to summon whatever powers he is supposed to have, and the army was just standing there, waiting for him to stop his prancing so he could use his powers. That was the moment when I decided that cycling back home through the rain was more pleasant than staying. That movie watches like a turn-based RPG. Jupiter Ascending. You know it was horrible when I didn't want to see more Mila Kunis. I saw this once when I was about 4 years ago, and I always throw the quote of "Did you know bees are attracted to royalty" every time me and my boyfriend see a bee. Suicide Squad 2016. The movie had really bad pacing and bland action. About halfway through we were so bored we got up and left. It was one of those movies where you're not really given much reason to care how it ends. Still stands as the only one I've ever walked on. Test screenings don't like the movie but they love the trailer, so let's just hire the trailer company to recut the entire movie. Who could have predicted that such a genius move like that could ever backfire? Downsizing that horrible movie with Matt Damon. I actually was speechless at how bad it was, lol. That one was disappointing because it was such a cool concept. Honestly, I thought it would have made a better series than a movie. Tenet, not because of the movie, but because of the sound quality. I'm not a native English speaker and I had a hard time understanding the dialogues. Without understanding the dialogues, it was hard to follow the story. Trust me, understanding the dialogue hardly made it easier. The last Jurassic, whichever. I watched the more recent ones a few weeks ago and was underwhelmed. They made me doubt whether the original was as good as I remembered, so I ended up watching that too. I was worried it would seem incredibly dated. I last saw it as a kid and didn't want to spoil the memories by seeing it through the lens of modern special effects. It was awesome. No regrets. I generally just switch from trying to enjoy it to enjoying roasting the shit out of it. MST3K really gave me an amazing tolerance for bullshit cinema. I hope you've checked out If Tracks. It's MST3K with more modern movies as well as the older shitty movie short films. The Love Guru walked out to see The Happening for the third time instead of Mayo. Mariska Hargitay. Jupiter Ascending. I just couldn't. Only movie I've ever walked out of was The Golden Compass. It's really tragic too because the filmmakers passionately wanted to do the movie right but the studio fucked everything up in the end. They literally made them cut the ending. Like not an alternative ending or anything like that, straight up stopped the movie early. They filmed it and everything. You can watch it here. https://yahoo.be/qi6javalidqg . It's like some prid Catholic exec only noticed the subject matter of the movie they produced just before it was released. The studio stepped in and said they couldn't have dead children or anti-religious themes in a story about infinite societies oppressed by theocratic entities, with the catalyst being that one of them starts mutilating children. Ugh. Not walked out, but I've never been able to sit through all of Batman v Superman. Went to the cinema for it and fell asleep halfway through. I tried watching the director's cut at home a few years later and you guessed it, fell asleep halfway through. Wonder Woman 1984. A host was gracious enough to let my wife and I stay at their house last minute. We were conversing when they said let's watch a movie and put on Wonder Woman 1984. I tried to excuse myself to bed, it was getting late, but my wife all but said if you get up now you'll look really rude to the host. I kept trying to fall asleep but my wife kept waking me up. When the movie was done the host said I don't really understand what happened. No, but I have walked out of a play in London's West End. It had Benedict Cumberbatch and it was called The Goat. It was about a man who was in love with a goat. I'm sure the goat was meant to be a metaphor for something but I didn't wait around to find out. Left at the interval. I never walked out of a movie, but I was reading the Eragon series in early high school. My bestie and I waited 2 hours in a mall to see this movie cause we showed up late. I entered that theater with utmost optimism. I never would have imagined what was in store for us. It took me 2 weeks of slowly sinking into a pit of despair as I thought about the movie. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it was utter fucking trash. When I came to this conclusion, it killed any joy in the series and I stopped reading the second book midway and I liked what I was reading. I was really looking forward to seeing what the monster soldiers looked like because I thought they were super fucking cool in the books. Instead, well, I was more than a little let down. Fun fact, that movie was the last to ever release on VHS in the US. This means, unlike popular belief, it was actually Eragon who killed the VHS, not the ring. The third Transformers movie is the only movie I've ever walked out during. Some shite about gerbils, G-force or something? I remember seeing that with a friend when we were younger. I mainly remember being confused why there was a guinea pig love triangle. I went to see the Total Recall remake with my then GF. We walked out about 40 minutes in. We were also the only people in there. Without getting one's asthmas, what's the point? Walked out of House of the Dead, alone in the dark, and in the name of the king. Youve is now the reason I always pay attention to who directed the film. The Master of Disguise with Dana Carvey. The critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes starts with, an irritating witless farce. I think that was generous. Turtle. I paid so I stay. I think they call that the sunk cost fallacy. Holmes and Watson. Was looking for this one. It would be higher up if more people actually went to it. Check the Rotten Tomatoes reviews and it sounds like 80% actually just flat out left the theater. The newest Jurassic Park movie, it was just insanely dry and boring. Oof yeah. The worst part is they kept throwing in these nostalgia moments, at least one every 10 minutes, just to keep the fans drip fed long enough to stay. The acting was notably awful as well. Deleted. The Avengers, the spy movie, not the Marvel one. That film is an absolute riot. Absolute dog shit, but Sean Connery controlling the weather is 10/10 in my book. Boogeyman, from 2005. Just boring as fuck. I saw 28 Days with Sandra Bullock when I was 12 with a few friends. For some reason we thought it was related to 28 Days Later and was about zombies. We were very disappointed. I was made when I found out that Sense and Sensibility wasn't the sequel to Dumb and Dumber. The fucking Tom Cruise Mummy movie had me groaning 3 minutes in, and within maybe 20 minutes I was headed home. That trailer they accidentally released with the messed up audio was more entertaining compared. I didn't walk out, but when I was watching Black Panther a group of 12-year-olds were being loud the whole time. They got up to leave halfway through the movie. What I vividly remember was one of the kids saying, "Why are we leaving Jake?" and Jake responded, "I just can't watch this. There's too many black people." I was dumbfounded. Some racist ass kid went to watch Black Panther and thought there wouldn't be black people.